Imitation is rampant. Hi, I'm Brian Pombo. Welcome back to Brian J. Pombo Live. Today I wanted to show you this quote by Eric Hoffer. If you're not familiar with Eric Hoffer's work, this guy's been gone for quite a while, but he has some amazing pieces of work out there where he discusses human nature as a whole, in terms of especially people in crowds, how they affect one another. Here's the quote. He says, "When people are free to do as they please, they usually imitate each other." And so what's this have to do with business? Well, for one thing, you have to recognize the truth of this quote. All right? It's just the plain fact of the matter. But if you take it in and you look at business, how it works. For one thing, well, I'll get into that in a second. Look at businesses. I can tell you an experience that I have going into the doctor's office, and you will find it very similar even if you live on the complete opposite end of the country. And in some cases, you can live in a completely different country and have the same experience. So let me tell you the experience. The experience is, I need an appointment to see a doctor. Guaranteed. I need an appointment to see a doctor. That's not unusual for most people. I have to call in. I have to schedule an appointment. I'm not talking to the doctor directly. I'm talking to an assistant. The assistant is the one that does the scheduling. It's usually pretty far out into the future. I can't get it the same day. And when it does happen, I show up early. I'm expected to show up early. I go to the front, I go to a waiting room and then go up to the front desk. Oftentimes it's through an area where they're cut off from everybody else and they have to open a little window. They oftentimes will hand you something to fill out, or they'll run you through the system and make sure that it all works out. They'll let you know whether the doctor is actually on time or not, and then you are expected to wait. Now, just that one process is almost typical across the board, no matter where it is that you're seeing a doctor. Now, you could say, well, that's because of regulations and everything else. Well, take something that's highly unregulated, like a car mechanic. Why do all car mechanics work almost all of them work identically the same? Yeah, you have the same situation no matter where you go. Now, sometimes, obviously, you have higher quality or lower quality. You'll pay higher price or lower price. But in general, if I went through the same scenario of what I go through with a car mechanic, you'd see something very similar. Why is that? Because when people get into a certain industry, it's just natural for them to imitate everyone else in that industry. It's easier to do that than try to come up with something new, especially if you've never been in business before, if you're coming straight out of college, or you have no, or you learned as a situation in a car mechanic. Oftentimes you learn working in another garage, in another mechanic shop, and you do what you were taught because it worked for them. Why won't it work for you? Type of deal. And the cycle goes on and on. Very few people break the mold and try something different. It's unusual to try something different. But the people who stand out in any industry are the ones that do things differently. The ones that try something. Maybe it's just doing nothing else but imitating a different industry. I heard mentioned one time where the drive-thrus came from. When it came from drive-through fast food, it originated with banks. Banks were the first ones to put drive-thrus in, and then they started doing it with fast food. They took something from a different industry, transferred it over. It was always one of my favorite comparisons. I don't remember who I originally heard that from, but I thought that was great. Imitation, let me talk about the part that isn't, you could take imitation to its most sinister limits, which I think it was probably what Eric Hoffer was referring to, because he'll oftentimes talk about mass movements. But just take it in general. We're all raised by somebody. In most cases, it's by parents. But even if you're not raised by parents, you're being raised by someone. You're being raised by foster parents. You're being raised in an orphanage. You're being raised on the street. You're being raised by somebody. You're learning how to speak, how to do things through somebody else. That integration, that imitation, it's built into our nature. We're taught at school, if you go through any type of regular schooling, you're taught to imitate. You're taught to do what the teacher tells you to do, and to do your best, and to follow along with the person that got the best grades. You're meant to look up to those people. I mean, look at the shirt. I've got a Mickey Mouse shirt on. Pure imitation. All the things behind me. Imitation. A whole bunch of life is about imitation. But if you can somehow break the mold in certain places in your life, you can't do it all the way. I mean, obviously there's laws that have to be followed and everything else, and if you break any of those, there's consequences. So you gotta pick and choose. But there's places in life that you can switch it to where you don't necessarily have to imitate the majority. Even if you just imitate the minority, that'll put you on a different track. But if you can try doing things that never get questioned, where whatever you're doing, however you're doing it, especially if you take a look at your business model and look at what am I doing that's identical to everyone else in my industry, and take one of those things and turn it on its head, switch it around, what happens then? You'll stand out. I got a whole book all about it, 9 ways to Amazon-proof your business. The whole concept is how to stand out within your industry. When I'm discussing content marketing and what we'll be doing with that in the future, all of that is all about standing out in your industry, standing out beyond and making yourself completely different from everybody else to where you aren't even considered the same industry as those other people. There's a huge key there that you got to pay attention to, and you got to think about when you're revolutionizing your business and how you are being perceived in the outside world. So go check out my book, get a free copy over at amazonproofbook.com. And that's all I got for tonight. We'll be back here tomorrow. In the meantime, get out there and let the magic happen.